Hi, I'm an American living abroad in Spain, and I'm here to talk about the differences between being an au pair or a language assistant, because now I can say I've done both here. I lived in Seville, Spain for about 9 months, and now I'm living in Santander, Spain as an au pair. So I'm just going to get into the key factors of what's important, what's good to know before deciding to become an au pair or to be a language assistant. Because I know a lot of people interested in the visa process. I get a lot of questions asking me about that. I just want to share my experience because I think it would be helpful. Because as we know, to get a visa anywhere can be a little bit difficult, but an easy way to get a visa here in Spain is to either come on a student visa, so to study abroad here, or to be a language assistant or an au pair, so basically teaching English. So let's start with payment. As a language assistant, you get a stipend of about $800 to $1,000 a month, depending on the region you get in Spain. So say you get Sevilla, where I was, Seville, you'd get about $800 because they calculate the cost of living to cover your basic necessities. It's not to save, it's not to create a life here really, it's just to experience literally living in that city that you choose. Like for example, Madrid, you would get €1,000 a month because the cost of living there is higher and things just cost a little bit more as compared to in Sevilla. And as an au pair, the payment process works like this. So everything is paid for as an au pair. Cost of living, expenses, anything like you need in the house, shampoo, conditioner, things like that, paid for. Food, paid for. If you go on trips with your family, typically paid for. So you're not really paying for really anything like normal adult necessities. They're covering that cost for you. So you get basically like a weekly allowance to cover any costs, like hanging out with friends or going out or exploring or buying things that you want, right? And so that payment is about €70 to 100 I've seen. So it can be more. I know of au pairs here that negotiate more money depending on how long they've been an au pair. But if this is your first time becoming an au pair, you will be offered around 70 to 80, and if you're lucky, €100, right? So it just depends on the family, depends what they are asking of you, depends on how much they are willing to give you or how much you're willing to ask for them, what you're comfortable with, because you really won't have anything you really need to pay for except for personal expenses, right? So it's obviously a lot less than the stipend you would get as a language assistant, but as a language assistant, you're paying for rent, you're paying for utilities, you're paying for groceries. So all that money is really going to your basic necessities, whereas an au pair, the little bit of money you get as an au pair goes to yourself and whatever little things you need, or like if you want to go out for drinks or something. Also, so the visa for a language assistant is a student visa. Now, I'm in the process of renewing my student visa, and so that's what I'm on right now as an au pair. But I'm pretty sure there may even be a separate visa if you are just here as an au pair. Maybe it is the student one, or it might be a different one. I'll check it out and put this right here if it is a different one. And then hours. So the hours you're working, right? As a language assistant in Sevilla, I worked about 14 hours, sometimes less, okay? So it was very flexible, my hours. Sometimes I would go in and sometimes the teacher wouldn't be there, so I wouldn't have to work kind of thing. Or sometimes I'd have to do more prep work, and that's kind of technically counted as hours, right? But as an au pair, you're required to do a little bit more hours. So the average is around 30 to 40 hours a week. So that's almost like a full-time job. Now, honestly though, as an au pair in this situation, it doesn't feel like that much. You know, you do have time with the child or children, right? Where you're teaching them English or just talking to them in English. Really, an au pair's job is just to teach conversational English and basic skills to the child so they can be able to get the accent of a native speaker versus, you know, the accent of somebody from Spain who learned Spanish or who learned English and is now using that accent, right? This is typically, these hours are Monday through Friday, and you're not expected to work weekends, just like with the language assistant job. Now, with my family, though, I do hang out with them on the weekends, but it's not as work. It's just like, oh, we're going to grab dinner, or they take me to cool tourist spots. It's very relaxed, and honestly, the whole experience as being an au pair is very relaxed. I know there are other experiences out there who are maybe not as easygoing as mine has been, but just my experience here, working the 30 hours or so, sometimes less, I believe, it feels like I'm just part of the family. Like, it doesn't feel like I'm doing laborious work. And I'm not saying that a language assistant, you are doing laborious work, but you're in a more professional setting. You're in a classroom, you're with other teachers, you're with like a bunch of other students, like there to formally learn. Whereas an au pair, you're living with them. So it's a lot more laid back of an experience and not as like scheduled. Does that make sense? Like, it's a little bit of here, it's a little bit of there. Like, you kind of just integrate yourself into their life to kind of help the kid learn English in the best way for them, versus needing to get up early, commute to school, and then teach a class and then come back as a language assistant would. Here, it's like you wake up and you start. You roll out of bed and you start. It's a very relaxed job. Not saying that, working with kids can't be difficult at times, but it's like one-on-one or one-on-two, right? Versus like a whole classroom. But every family is different. They're going to have different requirements. Maybe they will have more structured time, but mine's been very relaxed. Job expectations, right? So for a language assistant, your job is to show up, prep a lesson for some classes, and integrate yourself within the classroom to practice English with the students. My experience as a language assistant, I didn't have really any prep. There was one class I prepped grammar for, and that was like the most work I did. Other than that, I would just go in, talk to the students and just be like, how was your weekend? What's new? Like, trying to get to know them just so they can practice their English. They could ask me questions about like where I'm from, being in California. Like, that's really interesting for them too. And you would also be expected to like work with the teacher's schedule, see what they need from you. You could go on field trips with the students, basically under the teacher's guidance in whatever classroom you're in. Like, I wasn't in any English classes. I was in history. I was in gym classes. They integrated me into their lessons to be taught in English those days that I was there. And the days I wasn't, they were taught in Spanish. So you're just kind of there to reinforce English, to help them, practice it when they're not just like in English class. Now, my job as an au pair is a little different because you live with the family you're working for, right? Right now, my schedule is like, I'll wake up, I will spend time with the kid. It's actually interesting. So I speak Spanish with the family, but I speak only English with the kid. And if she has family members that are around, I only speak to them in English too, like her cousins, just so they can all learn English. But with the adults, I will speak Spanish. And I will come up with little games. We will draw. We will say things in English. We'll go on little trips and I'll be like, hey, what's that in English? And just kind of getting her used to seeing her surroundings in the world of English. She does know a basic sense of English. Her English is very good, but I'm just here to reinforce it and help her practice her conversation, the accent, the pronunciation, the grammar, and just get her comfortable speaking. I only have one child I look after. In that sense, it's been easier for me to really focus on her needs and what she needs from me. My experience so far with being a language assistant and an au pair has been fabulous, has been amazing. I have gained so much from both of them, even though they are so different. I think if you are thinking about being a language assistant versus an au pair, it's really more about how much independence you want. If you are an au pair, you're going to have less, right? Because you're going to be living under a roof of another family. You have to be conscious of that, right? Like, it's not your own space. You can't just bring whoever you want over. You can't just like make a mess. However you live alone, you can't live like that because you're living with a family and you still have to be professional because you are working for them, right? Whereas a language assistant, you can live with roommates, you can live by yourself, and your job is outside of the home. It's outside. You don't bring it home with you, right? So you can have a little bit more independence in that sense. And yes, you are working less hours, I would say, more you time. Being a language assistant, you're already super culturally immersed. You get to be around so many people, right? You're living in the country that is different from your own. So already you're culturally immersed, right? But being an au pair, I'm speaking a lot more Spanish. I'm around a lot more locals than I was as a language assistant, because as a language assistant in Sevilla, I found other American speakers. I lived with roommates from America. We all spoke English together. We all met other Americans to make friends with, and we didn't have a whole lot of Spanish friends. Our Spanish relationships were mainly with the teachers. We did meet a few people from the area who we could speak Spanish with, but it was mainly like the Spanish people we knew were the teachers, and that's like when we practiced our most Spanish. But as an au pair, you get to practice so much, especially if the parents don't know any English, right? You're going to be speaking it a lot. And that's really what I've enjoyed about this experience. And you meet the family, you're meeting friends, you're meeting a lot more people from the area here too. With that said, it's definitely put me out of my comfort zone a little bit, right? I can't go to my American friends like I did in Sevilla and be like, oh, this and this, right? It's like I have to make friends, because RVF kind of did that really well and connected us with friends. But as an au pair, you have probably a little bit more limited connections. There are Facebook groups and stuff like that, but it's you going out of your way to meet people versus like when I was in Sevilla, I was basically given a large pool of people to choose from, right? So yeah, if you're thinking about being an au pair or a language assistant, they're both really great experiences to live in Spain, enjoy a new city, meet new people, meet an amazing family, you know, or meet amazing teachers. Whatever route you go down, you're gonna be immersed in the culture and you're gonna have a great time. It's really about what you put in, you get out, right? As a language assistant, you can put in this and get out that, or as an au pair, you can put in this and get out that. It's really the experience you're looking for, but I will end on that note again. Like I will end on, it's more about knowing if you want more independence or if you want to just feel, I wouldn't say, it's strange. I'm not saying that you don't get independence as an au pair, but you're living with a family. You're basically their adopted child for the summer or however long you're there, and it's an amazing experience. I'm so glad that have gotten both experiences as a language assistant and as an au pair. But for somebody who, you know, doesn't want to live under somebody else's roof, obviously do the language assistant route. But if you're somebody who's open to living with a different family and really learning about Spain in that way, because when you live with other Americans or live outside of, you're kind of going to do your lifestyle the same as you would back home, right? Because that's what you know. But when you're an au pair, you're kind of forced to live like the locals do, right? You're living how the Spanish do here. You know, you wake up when they wake up, you eat what they eat, you do what they do. And for that, I love this experience. In my opinion, I think they're both great. I think they're both amazing opportunities to live in Spain, live abroad. I can't choose a favorite because they're honestly so great in their own ways. And I would say the lifestyle in general is just learning your schedule, learning your work schedule if you go to a school, learning your work schedule if you live with a family, and then using that free time to explore the city, explore where you are, meet new people. That's basically been the same for me in Sevilla and in Santander, where I am now. Lifestyle, I would say, is pretty much the same, except the work environment. Either you're going to be working with teachers or you're going to be living at home and doing your work there, right? Just my 2 cents on being an au pair and a language assistant. I hope it helped, and please feel free to reach out if you have any questions. Bye.